Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. It is Thursday, author of the weekday, Chrissy Fulnecki Day, but she will not be here today. She's got to be here next Thursday. She has, I think, a court appearance or something. Something that's slightly more important than her appearance on this show, as difficult as that may be to believe. But that's just a programming note for you. We are, however, in the 7 o'clock hour after the 7:30 news. We're going to chat with our very own Katie. Of course, you have been with her as she prepped for her citizenship test that was sponsored by the good people at Pyramid Roofing Company. And then it was a few weeks ago that she took and passed that test. And yesterday actually was the official swearing in. And we'll talk with her about that coming up after the 7:30 news. Were you able to ever find that or watch that? Because I know that some of those were streaming.
Yeah, so I found one stream for a naturalization process that happened earlier yesterday, but I couldn't find like hers. So I was a little bummed out about it, but she posted a bunch of photos. I'll share them at KSGF.
Okay, excellent.
And yeah, it looked just like a really great time. She was very excited. So I can't wait to hear her experience.
It's so remarkable if you think about it. You turn on the television and you will see, rightfully so, footage of all of the illegals that storm across our border. Biden inviting and welcoming over 5 million is the estimated count. I suspect it's higher than that. Since he became president, and as Congressman Burleson noted yesterday, just to give you some context, that's roughly the population of the entire state of Missouri. Think about that. And it's clearly a greater population than many states here in this country. That is the number of people post Biden's invitation, or his pre-invitation. He said during the debate, if I'm elected president, everyone that was turned away, everyone that was stopped at the border for illegally attempting to make it here during the Trump administration, come back. You will be welcome back. And they heard that call, and since then, over, according to estimates, 5 million have done just that. It's the size of Missouri, population-wise, roughly. And we hear the problem. We're told the problem isn't security. The problem isn't that we don't have a wall. The problem is that we have to have a pathway to citizenship. And yesterday, numerous occasions, correct? There are
Yeah, there was multiple.
so many immigrants yesterday that were being sworn in that took the pathway to citizenship that we're told doesn't exist. We have to have one. We have to provide a pathway to citizenship to all of these millions of illegals that are in the country. There is one. And somehow, amazingly, yesterday alone, there were enough that had found that path, successfully taken it, that were sworn in, that they had to have this was in Kansas City, numerous different swearing in ceremonies. Is that what they refer to it as, swearing in, becoming a U.S. citizen? Is that what they...
I think they call them naturalization ceremonies.
The naturalization ceremony, I think that they...
I think they switch it up, though.
Yeah. I know that there is an oath, if you will. Katie actually posted it, I saw on her social media, that takes place, that you pledge, I suppose. But the point being here is that we have the reality of what occurs, and that is a pathway to citizenship. And then for virtually all Democrats and some establishment Republicans, that's the whole problem, is that we don't have one. We need to create one. There is one. Could it be improved? Could it be more effective and efficient? Well, that certainly is a conversation to be had. But that's not a reason to allow people to come in illegally. To analogize it, many people argue that the process of getting plates for your vehicle and getting a driver's license and taking the driver's test, all of that could be more effective and more efficient, despite the fact that every single day you go to the DMV and there are people that are taking that pathway to drive legally. Could it be easier? Could it be more effective? Could it be more efficient? Arguably it could, but that doesn't mean that we allow millions of people to drive illegally, do we? When somebody gets caught driving without a license, or driving with a vehicle with no plates, they get pulled over, and they say, "Well, I just didn't want to take the pathway." Do we say, "Well, you're right. We should have a pathway to driver's license. We should have a pathway to get your vehicle license"? No, we don't. We say, "Well, there is one." Just because you don't like it, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Yet that's the world we live in when it comes to our government's position, largely, and illegal immigration. It's maddening. There's another thing that's maddening that's been occurring over the last couple of... It just really gives you such a distaste for the media. Even media that is not instinctively anti-Republican bias. And it is the story of DeSantis and his response to the situation in Ukraine. And if you listen to the news or you read any of the news stories, DeSantis is just, oh my gosh, what has he done? Well, he has essentially joined Putin's cabinet. And his response to the whole thing is that, well, we just shouldn't be involved because this is just a territorial dispute. This may come as a shock to you, but his response to the question that was posed by Tucker Carlson to numerous Republicans that have either declared the run for the presidency or largely seen as potentially making a run for the presidency or the GOP nomination. His response was actually much more detailed than that. And as I read through it, it ultimately is not much different, actually, than what all of the others have said. Now, there may be varying degrees of it, and so I thought it would be very instructive. Incidentally, it's also pretty difficult to find an article from objective news sources that are characterizing DeSantis as being out there and kooky and pro-Putin. Most of those stories don't actually have his full statement within the story so that you can actually read it. Some of them will have a highlighted word that references his statement before they give the edited version that you can click on, and then it will take you there. But many of the stories, in fact, there was Politico had a story, and it was all responses to what DeSantis said or what he wrote in his response. And many of them for Republicans. Marco Rubio, well, he clearly doesn't deal with foreign policy, and they're all ripping on him. The entire article based off, or it was an article of quotes from primarily Republicans ripping on him because of his position. Nowhere in the article did it actually print his position. Nowhere. It just, again, didn't go to journalism school. Did not even work on the Tiger Tales newspaper at Carthage High School. None of that stuff ever had any interest to me, but it's just mind-boggling to me that you can write stories that are based completely off of a political figure's position on something, but you don't even bother to print the position so the readers can know what the position was. You just get to hear everybody rip on it. Now, incidentally, when we go through this, my point is not to convince you that you should agree with him, but don't you think it's valuable to at least know what he says? And it is my assessment that what he says I don't think is really that far outside of the mainstream and not way out of line with many of what the other Republicans said. I read Mike Pence's statement. Frankly, I would say if you were making a Venn diagram, about 90% of it overlaps with what DeSantis said. So we've got that coming up. I've got a whole lot of stuff. I'll just tell you that. The American Transmissions Talk and Text Line 447-KSGF. Rima with the latest news. All right, first alert forecast, everyone. Showers and storms possible today. High of 60. Rain tonight. What the? What? Rain possibly mixed with snow?
Ow.
Do you see? Am I reading that right? This is the
What
first time I'm
day?
reading it. It says tonight.
No.
Rain possibly mixed with snow. Low of 25. Wind chill of 14. I mean, I guess all the ingredients are there. You've got precipitation and below freezing.
Yeah.
So I guess I shouldn't be shocked by this. I just hadn't read through to see the word snow. Tomorrow,
It says there's a 40% chance. Little or no snow and sleet accumulation
but
expected.
it says possibly. So, I mean, this is accurate. It just caught me off guard a bit.
Ew.
The girl child just got back. She was in Minnesota for several days.
Oh,
And I said, did it snow up there? She goes, yeah, there were like 5 feet of snow up there. And she, got back and it's in the 60s. But, hey, she brought some of it with her perhaps. Now, tomorrow, sunny, 45. Only the high Saturday is 36. So, take it for what you will. All right. Anybody interested in what DeSantis has actually said about the U.S. involvement in Ukraine? Instead of just being told how horrible it is and hearing responses from other people who potentially have their eye on the White House and see him as a challenger, I thought it would be instructive. Springfield's Talk 104.1. We'll have that next. I'm Nick Reed. A1 Custom Car Care, all of those car care needs, don't ignore that check engine light. It means something. It may not be that big of a deal. Peace of mind is a positive thing, even if it's just the next time you take it in. But I recommend you don't wait. If it comes, just pop in there and call them and say, hey, I got a check engine light. I'd love it checked. Often you say to yourself, well, I'll just go to one of those stores. I saw the commercials, and they said they'll just come out and do it for free. But what happens is it shows you the symptom, not the source of the problem. It is like you have a cough and you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, well, you've got a cough. You're like, well, no, I know I have a cough. but what's causing it? Is there, is this something that is going to go away? Is there signs of some deeper issue here? And that's what they have the technology and the know-how to do at A1 Custom Car Care, so that you're not just putting a Band-Aid on it, but at least learning the source of the problem. A1 Custom Car Care for all of those car care needs. The last 48 hours, I suppose, have been this focus on DeSantis and his response to a Tucker Carlson query regarding his position on the situation in Ukraine and the United States play in all of it, and what should it be. And this was a question that was sent out to numerous high-profile GOP folks, some who have declared their run for the presidency, some who have not but are thought to perhaps do so. And the headlines have all been that he just dismisses it as a mere territorial dispute that we shouldn't be involved in, that he's sided with Putin. And frankly, this is one of the reasons that the media just does us a tremendous disservice. This is not to argue you should agree with him or disagree with him, but I wanted to read to you what he actually wrote. And then ask you, is it really that far off of what most Republicans say? He wrote, while the U.S. has many vital national interests, securing our borders, addressing the crisis of readiness within our military, achieving energy security and independence, and checking the economic, cultural, and military power of the Chinese Communist Party, becoming further entangled in a territorial dispute between Ukraine and Russia is not one of them. Now, let's just look at that for a moment. First off, he is being criticized because he has characterized this as a territorial dispute. Well, it is. What is this over if it's not territory? That doesn't mean it's not significant. This is exactly, specifically, precisely what it is over. This is what it all... Putin believes that territory belongs to Russia. He's argued this. I mean, his argument is it's a territorial dispute. Everyone who is involved recognizes it's over territory. When we talk about it, when it is talked about in the media, there's a map, and the map shows the territories of Ukraine, and it shows the territories in which Russia has troops, and the territories, the Donbass region and some of the other pockets of Ukraine, Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula of Ukraine, and here are the areas that Russia has stronghold, and then some of the areas have stripes where it shows there's not necessarily anyone who is in territorial control. If it's not over territory, what is it over? When it came to Iraq, the argument was that it was over oil. There were numerous disputes as to precisely, really genuinely what it was over. But up until now, I was not aware that people believed that what Putin was attempting to do was not acquire territory. That's not his goal. That's not what this is about. And what Ukraine is doing is not trying to defend their territory. That this is nothing to do with territory. It has nothing to do with borders. It has nothing to do with lands. It just, to me, what? Again, this is the disservice that is done by the media. They throw that out there as if this is a no-brainer. Why, this isn't about territory. Yeah, it is about territory. Again, that doesn't mean that it isn't significant. Regarding what I thought was a pretty understood recognition that this was a fight over territory, he noted that becoming further entangled in a territorial dispute between Ukraine and Russia is not one of them. He's not arguing that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing now. He is saying further. We should not be going further into this. Incidentally, that's what many people believe and argue. In fact, right now, there's discussion about whether we should further entangle ourselves in this dispute by providing some F-16s, I believe it is. And I think there are 8 U.S. senators who have written a letter, some are Republican, some are Democrat, urging the current administration to do so. But the majority of people in Washington, including the Biden administration, have said, no, we're not going to go further than what we're doing now. The position that really there seems to be this tremendous focus on, that we're told is this massive division and offshoot and a defense of Putin, is pretty much what the majority of everyone else involved in this is saying, and that is we should not become further entangled in this. Now, I suspect this is part of the problem. We slowly but surely are. We have gone from sanctions to providing, the capabilities of intelligence, so forth, and now, the tanks, and now we're talking about air power, and so. Point being is, what DeSantis is saying here is not some wacko position that is a 180-degree in opposition position that from everybody else. He also noted the Biden administration's virtual blank check funding of this conflict for, quote, as long as it takes. That's the position that, Biden has said, we'll stay there and spend money as long as it takes, without any defined objective or accountability, distracts from our country's most pressing challenges. Now, again, is there anyone out there that is arguing? Now, they may be, when it comes to the blank check, they're operating this way, but they're not out there arguing, yes, we are going to give them a blank check without any accountability or without any defined objectives. They may not actually be requiring that, but they're not out there saying that because they recognize that that is poor policy. They recognize that most people want some accountability. They don't like the idea of a total, complete blank check. So again, what DeSantis is saying here is what I believe a majority of people think is reasonable. Now, there's some other aspects of this that I will read through, and it's not tremendously, we're not talking page after page after page. But when you read through it, and you see what a disservice the media is doing, and frankly, what a disservice so many others in political positions are doing. And I understand it's the context of an upcoming presidential contest and so forth, and so you're trying to define your opposition. But for Pete's sakes, can we at least be honest about what is being discussed, and then based off of those positions that are being discussed, and in this case, DeSantis, his position, look at it honestly and talk about it honestly. It doesn't mean we have to agree with it. It doesn't mean we have to disagree with it. But how on earth can we make educated decisions about the people we want to lead this country, potentially, if we aren't even looking at what they actually say and evaluating it intellectually? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. More coming up. Friday Road Show tomorrow. Going to be broadcasting live at Scramblers, sponsored by Affordable Towing. Love for you to come out and join us as we do that live broadcast, and you could just have yourself some breakfast while you do so if you'd like. Here's a traffic update. First alert forecast. Shower storms, 60 for a high today. Tonight, rain possibly mixed with snow. A low of 25, sunny. 45 tomorrow. Saturday, sunny with a high of only 36. Back up to 40 on Sunday. There's been this tremendous backlash. Well, it's an attempt by the media to further create division within the Republican Party and to demonize the one person that potentially they will, if they don't already, hate more than Donald Trump, and that's Ron DeSantis. He, like so many others, were asked by Tucker Carlson his position when it comes to our involvement in Ukraine, and he gave what I thought was a very well thought out position that frankly is not off base from what I believe most average people probably feel or at least think is reasonable. And it certainly isn't that far off what other Republicans who are attacking him say. Unfortunately, what they have done in the media is instead claim that he just dismissed it as a mere territorial dispute. Well, first off, it is a territorial dispute. That's exactly what it's over. I've not heard anyone, even who's attacking him, who claim it's over anything else. Is it over oil? Is it over religion? Is it, well, it's for power. Yeah, no, that's maybe the emotional component that's driving it, but everyone who's involved agrees it's over territory. In fact, there are very specific lines, and you can see them on maps that they show. Here are the territorial lines. Here is where the Russian troops are in this territory. Zelensky's saying that this will end when they are out of our territory. This is a territorial dispute by definition. It is absurd to claim otherwise. That doesn't mean it isn't significant, but it is over territory. He said that his argument is that it doesn't benefit us to become further entangled beyond where we are. I think that is, again, reasonable. Now, some people may argue, no, we should do more. We should have troops there. We should be giving them long-range missiles. We need to do more than we are now. But it is not unreasonable to say that we should not further entangle ourselves in this, go further than we are now. He also says that the blank check and giving them a blank check, as long as it takes without any objective that's defined and any accountability, distracts from our country's most pressing challenges. Is that unreasonable to believe that we should have some accountability in this? He noted, without question, peace should be the objective. Once again, unless you are somebody that just loves war, I think most people want to see this end to where there's no more fighting, hence peace. He noted the U.S. should not provide assistance that could require the deployment of American troops or enable Ukraine to engage in offensive operations beyond its borders. Is this a position that is at odds with the Republicans that are attacking him? Is this a position that is at odds with Democrats? To say we should not involve ourselves in a way that will require the use of Americans on the ground fighting Russians? Find that to be a reasonable position, one that perhaps not everyone may agree with. There are going to be some people that think, no, we should have troops there. But to say it is unreasonable and siding with Putin, making you a Putin ally because you don't want to engage American lives on the ground in Ukraine against Russia? He said F-16s and long-range missiles should therefore be off the table. And that's in reference to his argument that this is a territorial dispute and this is, what Ukraine needs to, we should supply them what they need to defend their borders, not things that they could utilize or would arguably utilize to go into Russia. He stated these moves would risk explicitly drawing the United States into the conflict and drawing us closer to a hot war between the world's two largest nuclear powers. That risk is unacceptable. A policy of regime change in Russia, no doubt among the D.C. foreign policy interventionists, would greatly increase the stakes of the conflict, making the use of nuclear weapons more likely. Such a policy would neither, and by the way, Lindsey Graham's the only person I know, high profile, who has argued for a regime change. Such a policy would neither stop the death and destruction of the war nor produce a pro-American Madisonian constitutionalist in the Kremlin. History indicates that Putin's successor in this hypothetical would likely be even more ruthless. The cost to achieve such a dubious outcome could be astronomical. The Biden administration's policies have driven Russia into a de facto alliance with China. Again, true. Because China has not and will not abide by the embargo, Russia has increased its foreign revenues while China benefits from cheaper fuel. Again, true. Coupled with his intentional depletion of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and support for the left's Green New Deal, Biden has further empowered Russia's energy-dominated economy and Putin's war machine at Americans' expense. Again, true. Our citizens are entitled to know how the billions of U.S. tax dollars are being utilized in Ukraine. We cannot prioritize intervention in an escalating foreign war over the defense of our own homeland, especially as tens of thousands of Americans are dying every year from narcotics smuggled across our open border and our weapon arsenal critical for our own security are rapidly being depleted. Now, what within that is unreasonable? In fact, I find it difficult to determine what position he's taking that is in opposition to any major Republican potential presidential candidate, including those who are attacking him. He's saying we shouldn't have a blank check. He's not saying we shouldn't be involved at the level we are. He says we shouldn't get more involved to the point that we're going to have U.S. troops there. He says that we shouldn't just give a blank check with no timeline and absolutely no accountability, that we as taxpayers at least have the right to know to some degree, what's the objective here? What does that look like? Where are the dollars going? Noting that much of what we've done has actually, including sanctions, and this is all true, has helped Russia and it has helped China with cheaper fuel. Because what happened was all of the fuel embargo, which we thought was going to be an actual embargo, which would stop revenue flow to Russia. Instead, they were just selling it cheaper to not Russia, or not just Russia, but India was, to China, but India was purchasing it as well. And they were actually seeing an increase in revenue from this. And then China, which is our geopolitical enemy, is getting cheaper fuel while it's more expensive for us. I mean, the more that you read through what he actually said, the more everything he says is accurate and true. The point of reading through this is not to argue that he is completely right, others are completely wrong, or that he should be president of the United States. But when you look at this versus the way that not only the media is presenting it, but the way that Republicans, who should know better, I mean, they get into this, the enemy of my enemy is my enemy, which long-term does harm to, in this case, arguably our national security, but certainly the Republican Party. Instead of recognizing what the media is trying to do here, one, completely mischaracterize his position here, and then two, pit Republicans against one another so that and then you see they can't help themselves. Intellectually, they must know what is going on, but they see an opportunity, those that also want to make their way to the White House, to do harm to DeSantis. And their desire to get rid of him in the context of a competition to the White House overrides their intellectual approach, in which they must recognize what the whole goal is here, that they just can't help themselves. And it shows a lack of discipline and I think a lack of conviction. It doesn't have to be a love fest. But instead, a recognition, if you get, I mean, this is just me, you get contacted by the media and they say, hey, well, what do you think about DeSantis claiming that this is nothing but a territorial dispute and we shouldn't be doing any of this at all? I'd be like, whoa, wait a minute. First of all, I have no problem at all discussing his position, but boiling it down like that is completely misleading. If you want me to talk about what his position is, I will be more than happy to do so, but I'm going to do just that instead of your propaganda. That's what they should be doing. Kamala Harris, the vice president that a significant number of influential Democrats are trying to figure out a way to boot from the Biden administration, went on CBS's Late Show with Stephen Colbert, because that's where all serious elected officials go. And she was lecturing DeSantis for his position that we should not give a blank check to Ukraine without some accountability, and that we should not further escalate our involvement to the point that U.S. troops are involved. Evidently, that is somehow a pro-Putin position, that we don't want American boys and girls, young men and women on the ground fighting in Ukraine. And she claims that she's met with over 100 world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings. I did not realize she was that busy. And she said, when you've had that experience of meeting and understanding the significance, again, of international rules and norms and the importance of the United States of America, standing firm and clear about the significance of sovereignty and territorial integrity, the significance of standing firm against any nation that would try to take by force another nation, if you really understand the issue, you probably would not make statements like that. That is the exact same argument that a person could make in defending the war in Iraq. It is amazing. Now, you've got to go back in history a bit here, and the initial Gulf War. It was all about the invasion of Kuwait. That's what it was all about. The exact same premise that is being used to bash anyone who says we should not have troops on the ground in Ukraine, which is what DeSantis' position was. And, of course, his acknowledgement that this is a territorial dispute, which, again, it is, just like Iraq and Kuwait. There is a difference, clearly, and this is what most people would point out, rightfully so, that, well, the difference is, in Iraq, we were committing troops, and we aren't in Ukraine. Yeah, that's what DeSantis is also arguing we should not do. I mean, where is the problem here? These same people who to this day will look back on the war in Iraq and you know, bash it as something that should have never been done and so forth. You know, these are okay arguments to be made, make your points, but then turn around and say that anyone who thinks that we should not further escalate our involvement in Ukraine doesn't understand. We have to stand up for other countries when it comes to their territory. By the way, her own statement, that all of this again, maddening. The big takeaway they're bashing DeSantis for is that, well, he claims it is a territorial dispute. This is a quote from Harris, I assume representing the Biden administration's position, with Stephen Colbert, noting that when you have had the experience of meeting and understanding the significance, again, of international rules and norms and the importance of the United States of America standing firm and clear about the significance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. We live in a world in which the media is creating this ridiculous framework of an argument, bashing DeSantis based off the fact that he claims it is a territorial dispute. And the White House, in order to bash his position, sends out the Vice President Kamala Harris to note that this is about territorial integrity, which is what DeSantis is saying. Yet we're supposed to be outraged at him and then applaud her when she bashes him for noting that this is about the exact same thing that she's acknowledging it's about, and that's territory. These people are all beyond frustrating. It is oftentimes rhetorical. Average person will say, I just don't even know why anybody would even bother running for president, or what sane person. And oftentimes it's just because of the messiness of it all, and just, all the bickering. You have that in life. You're going to have that in virtually every aspect of life in which you are dealing with other people and decisions have to be made, whatever it is. Churches, organizations. I mean, in reality, the only scenario, real life scenario, that you are not going to have conflicts with other people are scenarios in which you are off the grid and you live by yourself. That's it. Because people, they have differing views, and when there's more at stake, people can sometimes get nastier. So I can understand why some people, they don't mind that. Some people thrive on that. I think Trump is an example of that. Most people who run for the presidency do. So I've never, in that context, been at a loss as to why somebody would not run for president. But the area that I do say to myself, if I were in that position, I'd say, what's the point, is what we've just been talking about this hour. And it's when you're somebody like DeSantis and you put out a statement that in reality, when you look at it and break it down, is not much different than what everybody else is saying, yet 2 words are taken from it. And everyone piles on you, pretending as if you did not, that you're taking some wild position that is out of the mainstream. And I if I were in that position, I'd be like, we can't even have a discussion about this. You want to disagree with me? Fine. But how are we supposed to advance and move forward if we are not a nation of ideas? But instead, a nation of, let's edit what I said and try to turn it into something I did not say. Or gaslight the world by claiming, even when what you're saying is the same as what I'm saying, you claim that when I'm saying it, it's pro-Putin and it's out of step and I'm insane, I don't know what I'm talking about, but when you say it's reasonable. I don't mind. In fact, I enjoy having arguments over the facts and discussions and debates. But when you are arguing with somebody that just wants to put their fingers in their ears and go, nah, 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 you're an idiot, everybody, it's like, how do you do that? What is the point ultimately? That's the position or the point that I would feel I would throw my hands up and be like, you know what, I'm out. News in 60 seconds. Floors Plus Nixa, Floors Plus Springfield for all of your flooring needs. You want hardwood floors? They've got hardwood floors. You want luxury vinyl planking, carpeting, tile. You want them to do the plus part, perhaps new backsplashes, your kitchen's outdated, or you want a customized tile shower as if you're at some luxury high-end hotel that you know you don't actually even belong in. They can do that for your home. And 0% financing for 12 months. That's Floors Plus in Nixa and in Springfield. Greta Thunberg, the climate activist who, because she was a child, you weren't supposed to criticize. Isn't it? This is the upside-down world that gets crafted. We're supposed to listen to a child when it comes to science-y things and these predictions, these massive predictions. But if you note, hey, she's not real. She's, like 13, 14 years old. How dare you criticize her? That would be not much different than somebody applying for a job to be head of neurosurgery. And you're like, well, you're 15 years old. You don't really have any background. How dare you? How dare you? What sort of world do we live in when this 14-year-old that wants to be head of neurosurgery should be an inspiration, not criticized because of her age? Would we do that? Some would, I'm sure, as we become more woke and we have woke injected into medicine. Well, evidently she has deleted a 2018 tweet warning that climate change will wipe out all of humanity by 2023. If we don't stop using all fossil fuels. I wonder why she deleted that. Yet another doomsday prediction made by people that we're told are experts, that we are supposed to listen to as experts, that we can't criticize because they're experts. Yet they are wrong on really big things. I am not the sort of person who believes that an individual has to be right 100% of the time in order for you to listen to them and take in what they say. Because no one, not even Fauci, despite what it is that the elites tell you, no one is right 100% of the time. However, when someone is wrong, there's two approaches that can be taken. One, an acknowledgement. I was wrong on that. I'm going to look into it, figure out why I was wrong, so that I can learn and next time decrease the chances that I'm wrong. That way I am a more credible person because my interest is the truth. Or you can just pretend you never said it. Now, which of those two paths do you think is worthy of listening to the person who took that path? If you have some sort of debilitating disease and you have a twin that has the same, and you're going to two separate doctors, and both of these doctors, they prescribe you the same remedy, and it doesn't get better for you, it gets a little bit worse, and you go back to your doctor, and your doctor's like, well, yeah, you know what? Here's why I prescribed it. This is why I thought it was going to work, but I realized so I did some research, and I now know why it did not work. I understand why I was wrong, and based off of that information that I have since learned, we're going to try this path. And then your twin's doctor goes, well, here, take this prescription instead. And you're like, but that's what you just gave me that didn't work. No, I didn't. Just go ahead and take it. Don't question. Do you have a degree on your wall? Yet when it comes to so many issues, climate change being one of them, the people that we are told we must listen to are the people who make these wild predictions, and when they're wrong, they just delete the tweets, pretend they never said it. Pretend we never claimed that polar bears would be extinct. Pretend that we never said that the ice caps would be gone by now. Pretend that we never said that the rainforest would be completely depleted. Pretend that we never said humanity would end as we know it. Pretend that we never said that the oceans were going to dry up. Pretend that we never said that we were going to have global freezing. Pretend, just one thing after another. Yet it's the exact same people we're talking. Now, if you don't listen to them, you're a science denier. Oh, that's the approach to science? In the mind of the left, this is a resume enhancer for Greta Thunberg. The fact that she has been proven completely wrong, and instead of acknowledging it and learning from it, just pretend that she never said it. There is some polling number regarding Kevin McCarthy, and his approval rating has increased. In fact, he is doing better than former Speaker Paul Ryan was during this point. These are pretty positive numbers. There is also something I want to share with you, not as a warning to prevent it from happening here in the United States. We're beyond that point. It has to do with socialized medicine, but just to let you know where we're headed. If there's anything that we have learned, talking about learning and understanding reality, it does not matter how many times it is shown and proven that government involvement in medicine results in worse services, worse products, worse outcome. There is no learning from it and going in another direction. There's doubling down. And the same people who point to over there in England, you don't have to pay to go to the doctor. It's wonderful, because free equates wonderful to some people. And there's this piece, and it's based off of some leaked data that is showing the government-run healthcare system, and they've been lying about. They've acknowledged that things are really bad, but they've been lying. It's even worse than they're saying it is. And this is the direction that we're headed here in the United States. Because again, instead of saying, "Man, we don't want to go that route," really glad we can learn from their mistakes. We have people in charge who say we want to do what they're doing. Jason Reimer with the latest news update. The first alert forecast sponsored by Navant Employee Benefits that work. Showers, storms today, high of 60. Rain possibly mixed with snow tonight, down to 25. Tomorrow, sunny, 45. Sunshine on Saturday, but cold with a high of only 36. We got our own bracket going on at ksgf.com. Biden quote, sponsored by Pyramid Roofing Company. We advanced beyond last week. You voted, and we've got a new round. You go and you listen to the Biden quotes and choose your favorite to advance to the following week. There is a $200 gas card up for grabs. It is an entry for each week that you participate. So you don't have to correctly predict the winning quote. That, though, will be done by your votes. But every week that you participate will be one entry, and then one will be randomly drawn. If it's you, then you'll get that $200 gas card from Pyramid Roofing Company, and that is at ksgf.com. Poll, Kevin McCarthy's approval surges, far superior to Paul Ryan's at the same point in his speakership. An Economist YouGov poll published yesterday shows McCarthy has an approval rating of 41% with a disapproval rating of 34%. This marks a net gain of 6 percentage points since last week's survey from the pollster. Among Republican voters, McCarthy has a 62% approval rating with only 17% disapproving, which is a net plus of 45%. In comparison, Ryan, the last GOP speaker, had an overall approval rating of 33% after his first 2 months, with a disapproval rating of 3%. A YouGov poll from early January of 16 showed among Republicans his approval rating pinged at 45, with 30% disapproving. McCarthy is a net 30 percentage points ahead of where Ryan was, with GOP voters at a similar point in his speakership. McCarthy has enjoyed substantial gains in favorability week over week. Currently has a positive favorability rating of 39% and 38% who disapprove, marking a net 12-point gain for the speaker. Among Republicans, 63% find him favorable, 22% find him unfavorable, signaling a net 17-point gain since last week. Ryan, at his comparable point, had favorability and unfavorability ratings at 31 and 38%. Just 45% of Republicans categorized him as favorable, while 39% said he was unfavorable, marking a net of plus 6 percentage points, which is 35 points behind where McCarthy currently is. I know those numbers can get very confusing. You get a lot of them in there, but point being is that McCarthy is much more favorable, or viewed as more favorable. And Paul Ryan, of course, his big thing as speaker, I mean, he'll go out there and curry favor with the media and reach across the aisle. And thus far, McCarthy's big move in terms of public attention has been the release of the January 6 tapes. Now, he's done a lot of other things, of course, that aren't going to get quite the coverage of that. But it's interesting that favorability overall for somebody like Paul Ryan, that although he was a Republican, was considered more favorable amongst the media, and somebody who's out there bashing Trump and Trump supporters says he won't even go to the convention if Trump is the nominee. And then you have somebody like McCarthy that essentially is equated to and being described as a propagandist that supports insurrection, yet his favorability rating is much higher than Paul Ryan's was at this time during his position as Speaker. The collapse of Britain's National Health Service, the crown jewel of socialized health care. This is something that has been occurring for years and years and years. It was in collapse during the Obamacare campaign, in which we were all being told how wonderful health care was when it was free, when it's free, and nations like England and other socialized nations. But England's the one they love to point to. They loved why they would point to England, I don't know, given that it has so, even at that point, deteriorated so far, and that when it came to life expectancy for those who are dealing with disease and medical care, life expectancy was longer in the United States than in Britain. Now, what would happen, just to give you an idea of how they rigged all of this and created disinformation, and still do, to try and convince Americans that this model is the great model, is you'll hear about life expectancy in the United States is lower than it is in a country like England. If you take out murders and car accidents, that's not the case. But isn't that fixing the numbers? No, it's making it more accurate, because it does not matter what sort of health care you have. If somebody shoots you in the face, you die. Whether health care is expensive or cheap or free, it does not matter. You can get shot in the face in Cuba, where they have socialized medicine, or shot in the face out in the woods where you have no access to medical care at all, and the outcome's going to be the same. And car accidents are the same situation, largely, particularly in the United States, with highway accidents, and we have much more of those. And again, if you are in your vehicle, and particularly if you're not wearing a seatbelt, and you hit a semi and you get ejected out of your windshield and then run over by 8 lanes of traffic, it does not matter what sort of healthcare system exists. So when you evaluate the life expectancy of people who die from ailments that do not involve the need of hospital care, the United States has had a longer life expectancy. I want to share with you some of the latest information, and some of this is because of leaked info from the National Health Care System in England that shows they've been covering up how bad it actually is. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Collapse of Britain's national healthcare service, the crown jewel of socialized healthcare. Great Britain's National Health Service, which is meant to provide free universal health care, and that's all you need to know. It's free. Free is wonderful. It is collapsing under the strain of long wait times, hidden data, and excess deaths. But it's free. Long held as the crown jewel of socialized health care, universal health care. The world's largest government-run system is unraveling. The crisis has led to a surge in excess deaths that has outlasted the coronavirus pandemic, with ambulance and emergency room delays linked to hundreds of deaths every week. Leaked internal data show hospitals already near capacity last fall could not keep pace as the winter flu season took hold. After waiting hours for medical attention, patients are evaluated while still in the ambulance or the waiting room or hallways. While figures show tens of thousands of people spending 12 hours or more on hospital gurneys after being admitted to the emergency room. Now, just so we can get a sense of, we're just a bit behind them. But we have elected officials, and the Democrat Party is as fast as they can pushing us to these results. Remember, one of the selling points to Obamacare is that emergency wait room times are going to be slashed by adding more government. Now, We had the benefit, if we were honest, at looking at Great Britain's healthcare system and saw that with their system of free healthcare that it did not diminish the wait times in emergency rooms, but instead it was making it so bad that you had people waiting hours and hours and hours, dying because of it. And wait times went up after Obamacare went into effect in this country. I mean, we have the benefit of seeing where our future lies, which is one of the reasons I'm sharing this with you. One National Health Service worker at a hospital in Liverpool likened the situation to a war zone, according to CNN. Quote, "You see the kind of shortages, waits, and burnouts." Gee, have we been hearing about burnouts lately in our system? "And deprivation that we're seeing right now, and there's no amount of money that's going to solve the problem," according to Michael Cannon, director of Healthcare Policy Studies at the Cato Institute. Quote, "There's no bureaucrat smart enough to send the money where it needs to go." Here at home, many warn that a push to introduce the public option healthcare or a federal single-payer system could drive the country towards increasingly lethal outcomes. While President Biden has claimed to support the public option, they give it this name because they don't want to call it the same thing that it's called, where it has proven to be a total failure and people are unnecessarily dying because of it. So you just give it a different name. We'll call it the public option. While Biden has claimed to support the public option that would compete with private insurers, growing numbers of Democrats have endorsed the single-payer legislation. Over half of House Democrats sponsored legislation during the last Congress to expand Medicare in their push for a single-payer healthcare system to make us more like Great Britain. Cannon noted, quote, "Bernie Sanders will point to the U.S. Medicare program as the model he wants to use, the Medicare program that avoids the sort of shortages we see in the NHS only by spending obscene amounts of money. If you look at President Biden's budget, you'll see that we cannot afford it." When you soak up those resources to spend on wasteful medical care, you're taking bread out of the mouths of low-income families, making it harder for them to afford medical care and harder for them to afford adequate housing and to live in an area where they can get a decent education. All these things have an impact on health, and so you're not promoting health by promoting wasteful spending on Medicare. Still, some government-run health care options produce even worse outcomes. Now, there's been a series of leaks revealing emergency room wait times in the system that is currently and has been for some time in Great Britain that many here in the United States want to duplicate. Because for whatever reason, they love the idea of horrible outcomes for patients. Going to get a traffic update. I'll share the leaked info with you next. I'm Nick Reed. We're going to have a look at the weather here in a moment. First, Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Well, there are hundreds of roofing companies in our area, so whenever you find yourself needing one, it can be kind of stressful on how to pick the right company for you. And that's why I love to recommend the friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. There is so much more to a roof than just decking and shingles, and one of my favorite things about the Pyramid Roofing Company is that they actually show you how your roof works. They educate you on getting the right shingles for your home, the right vents and the right amount of vents, and they are just top-notch individuals. So if you do find yourself needing a whole new roof or just a roof repair, make sure to call the professionals over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. You can find all of the contact information for Josh and the Pyramid Roofing Company at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
Oh, Catherine Doyle reading a piece here that she has put together, the collapse of Britain's national health services, the crown jewel of socialized healthcare. This has been going on for some time. We had the benefit of, during the Obamacare discussion, do we or don't we, seeing these results. However, media lied about the results and gave disinformation so that people were not fully informed, and we would end up getting a step closer to full-blown socialized medicine. And we have it to a significant degree, significant enough that we continue to see longer wait times, increased costs, less efficiency, which of course means diminished health care. But instead of, again, as an intellectual society does, looking at it and going, well, that doesn't work, let's try something different, the answer is let's do more of that. And let's look to somebody who's failed at a faster pace or who is ahead of us on the failure curve and do what they're doing. And that's the answer that many elected officials, primarily in the Democrat Party, have when it comes to our health system. And this is a renewed story because of leaked information regarding some of the actual results of nationalized health care in Britain. And she continues to write on that some government health care options produce even worse outcomes. After a series of leaks revealed emergency wait room times up to 5 times higher than the publicly available figures, the NHS promised to begin making the hidden data available. In other words, they've been lying about it. They've been covering it up. Britain's Health Secretary Steve Barclay said the NHS would publish the real numbers beginning in April in an effort to improve transparency. Quote, too much of the debate about accident and emergency and ambulance services is based on anecdotal evidence, Barclay wrote in an op-ed for The Telegraph. I want NHS managers and the wider public to have access to the same facts from the front line, starting with publishing the numbers of 12-hour waits from time of arrival in A&E from April. Public data in December showed 50,000 people waited 12 hours to be seen after being admitted to the emergency room. The true figure was 50,000 every single week. This according to the leaked internal data obtained by The Independent, a British newspaper. Deaths linked to the long wait for emergency treatment reached as many as 500 every week in October last year, the outlet reported. More than 30,000 patients a week were waiting 12 hours or more for treatment at that time. People waiting for an ambulance after suffering a heart attack face an average wait time of an hour and a half, according to The Telegraph. Some wait more than 1.5 times that. A recent ambulance strike prompted the head of the NHS Confederation, an association representing NHS groups, to warn that they cannot guarantee patient safety. On the eve of recent ambulance strike, the head of the association representing the NHS groups warned in a letter to British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak of healthcare leaders' concerns that they also cannot guarantee patient safety. Pressure is mounted on Sunak to fix the system as the government announced new spending and a plan to review the practices. So in other words, what's their approach? Well, we are government and we have the answer. Critics have questioned Sunak's commitment to the task, pressing the Prime Minister to reveal whether he relies on the system for himself and his family. Despite the dangerous outcomes shown in recent months, past Prime Ministers have praised the NHS services, with former Prime Minister Boris Johnson claiming it saved his life when he caught coronavirus. By contrast, Sunak repeatedly declined to say whether he relies on the system or instead receives private medical care, calling health care a personal choice that his medical care was, quote, not really relevant. Days later, a spokeswoman for the Prime Minister told the BBC that the Prime Minister was registered with an NHS doctor and did not have private coverage, though she said she would not get into the timeline of that. This is where we're headed. And I say this is a warning as to what's to come. It's not a warning to prevent it, because it has become clear it does not matter how bad it gets. The answer is going to be more of what doesn't work. And here's the thing. You will have people that push for national health care, socialized medicine, single-payer system, call it whatever you want. Because in their mind, if it's free, it's good. I mean, that's their go-to. As long as it's free. Doesn't matter if it's quality. Doesn't matter if you actually get it before you die. Doesn't matter if it leads to wait times that cause the death rate to increase dramatically, as long as it's free. Because people like that. They like the idea of free. Even if it means you're dead, at least you got it for free. Then there are going to be those that will try and justify. They'll use statistics. They'll use these numbers that oftentimes are manipulated. But here's the thing. We already have the opportunity to recognize when we had more cost-effective medicine, when we had cheaper medicine, when we had shorter wait times. That was before government got involved. If you want to go way back, the rate of inflation for medicine was consistent with the rate of inflation for everything else. You know, you hear about the inflation rate when Trump was president, 1.2%, 1.3%. Prior to government involvement in medicine, that was a rate of inflation for your doctor visit. That was the rate of inflation for your medicine. That's why you watch old episodes of Andy Griffith or any of those shows. The doctor came to the house, and Aunt B got some money out of her purse and paid it. It was like getting Grubhub. And it was because of a free market, patient-based system that did not have government involvement. But then people come along and they want to buy votes, and they claim, well, we can do that for you, but it'll be free. It won't cost you anything at all. And then it gets worse. And then the same people who cause, instead of saying, oh, okay, we'll go back to the way it was. No, we're going to do more of what we're doing. We're literally killing ourselves when it comes to this snake oil that is sold to us. And in all reality, the elected officials that continue to put us down this dangerous path that is very damaging to our healthcare system is because they're selling what is for what people are buying. And people buy the lie. They buy the pipe dream. They love the idea that this wonderful system can be created in which no one ever has any bad experience in healthcare, and no one ever dies, and everyone stays healthy, and it doesn't cost a single thing. And because they want to believe that so badly, it doesn't matter how often it shows that not only does that not work, but the opposite occurs. They'll vote for people who make that claim. I mean, just think about the number of people who are in charge that are the same people, many of which are in Congress today and in the Senate today or in the White House today, that say, oh, listen to me. Biden's in, was it Vegas yesterday? Well, he was in California, and then he I think somewhere in Nevada or Utah, and he's out there, he's promoting his plans for medicine to make it cheaper. I'm sorry, was he not involved in voting for Obamacare? The same people who say, listen to me, I'll fix it, are the people who created the problem. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, shame on us. Because we keep buying the crap that they're selling. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Couple of text messages regarding socialized medicine. I worked for an international company that had an office in Manchester, UK. Every single person that worked there in a management role had a concierge medical plan outside of the government system because it was so horrible. I lived in Denmark for 2 years. My thoughts on polls about socialized medicine, they are educated thoughts to say they love it. However, when you really talk to them in casual conversation, the truth comes out. They understand it is not free. They tell you their true feelings about it. And let me tell you, I think if you were to sum it up in a phrase, socialized medicine, it is great if you're healthy. And because you'll talk to people, and I go, well, yeah, I go to the doctor and get my annual checkup, and I don't get a bill for it. It's wonderful. But when you actually get sick, when you need emergency care, when you need care for something like diabetes or cancer, that's when things go horribly wrong. So it's fine if you're healthy. It's just the sick people who get screwed over. For the very first time, as an American citizen, Katie joins us. The swearing in took place yesterday. For those that don't know, Katie has been with the station for several years now. How long has it been? 3 years or so.
Yeah.
And she, of course, you do promotions full time, but also produces All Out Law, which airs here on Saturday morning with Kyle Wyatt, and then does other stuff for us as well, fills in. And we had lead up to the testing to become a citizen, to take that pathway to citizenship, which exists, lo and behold. And Katie took it. Pyramid Roofing sponsored that. She passed, and then swearing in took place yesterday. You are as American as I am, as Sarah. You are an American.
Yes.
So
yes.
I mean,
I want to go vote now.
Yeah, what's
somewhere for something? I don't care.
Just for anything at all.
Yes.
So I mean, what was it? What was the ceremony like? It was in Kansas City. I know they have them here sometimes. They sort of rotate them, but I guess there wasn't one planned for here for some time. Kansas City. What was this like?
Yeah. So the ceremony took place at Harrah's Convention Center.
Okay.
I believe that's how you pronounce that name. It was very well organized. First of all, very well. First thing I had to do was just to stand in line and wait for my package with documents, and that was it. Then you just sit and wait for the judge to come up on the stage, say a few things, then you say the oath, then you say pledge allegiance, and you're done. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I was sitting next to a lady from Philippines and a guy from India who happens to be from Springfield as well.
Kidding.
And he works as an oncology doctor, the guy from India, so shout out to him. Yeah, the entire ceremony did not take longer than 30 to 40 minutes. It was very quick.
And there were how many? Because I know they were happening throughout the morning.
Yes.
How many in your grouping?
Yes, so there were 150 applicants with me from 50 different countries. So instead of like the typical graduation ceremony way, like when you walk up the stage and you like get your diploma, whatever, this time they did it like they say the country, you get up, you get recognized, you sit down.
Okay.
Because there were too many people to, you know.
Right, to go through everybody's.
Yeah,
And plus, sometimes if you're an American and some of the names you're not familiar with, you could kind of flub them up, and you don't want to do that, especially on such an important day. So
yes, they did it very,
very well.
Shout
out to Russia, shout out to Britain, shout out to wherever. Were there any countries you're like, I've never even heard of that?
Oh, yes.
I'm sure.
Oh, yes. So many countries. Oh, my
like
goodness.
Where?
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I received all my documents. Then the ceremony ended in the most American way, too. You were talking about free stuff, your other break, and it ended with free stuff from America.
Like a koozie?
Yeah, it was like a sticker.
Oh,
and
instead of I voted, what it is, it's like, I'm an American.
Yeah, it was like an American flag in a heart.
Okay.
And then some pants, some candies, too, bracelets. I almost started a chant to USA, USA. You know, I should have. I should have, but I was scared of the officers.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think that'd be real suspicious.
Yeah.
She seems like she's trying too hard.
Yeah, so after the ceremony ended, you just go and you get your voting card that you mail later so that you'll become a voting member.
Okay.
And you apply for passport in your local court, I believe.
Okay.
So you do that, and you also have to update your social security number because because you became someone
Okay.
different than just a resident
Yeah.
of the United States. So yeah, it was very quick and it was stress free, which
That's
I
awesome.
loved.
That was a
definitely.
lot less stressful than taking the test, I imagine.
Oh
which was,
yes, yes.
What, about 6 weeks ago or so?
Yeah, I took the test February 15th. So exactly a month.
And so I can't believe I almost forgot this. We're going to have a party for you.
Yes.
Listeners are invited. We're going to do. It's going to be at Retro Metro Saturday the 25th. Is that the
That's
date?
correct,
So
yep.
not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, and we'll remind everyone on air. But I guess it'll function kind of like a happy hour does, where we just ask everybody to come out and to welcome you as a U.S. citizen, and we're just so happy for you. And
Yes.
so that will be at Retro Metro Saturday from 4 to 6 to let people know. Anything else?
I just want to say a huge thank you to Pyramid Roofing, of course, for sponsoring that,
Yeah.
to you guys for making this happen, and to the United States of America to become my new home. This is like, I'm about to get emotional because
It's good. It's okay.
this is like, I genuinely feel like I'm home here.
That's wonderful. Well, we feel that way too.
Thank you.
Anything else, Sarah? that
No,
you
just
think
welcome
of?
home.
Yes,
Thank you.
welcome home.
Thank you.
We
I'm
love
gonna
you, Katie.
cry.
Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. American Transmission's talk and text line regarding Katie yesterday officially taking her oath, becoming an American citizen. That interview made me tear up. It's nice to know people want to come to this country the correct way and really understand the value of being an American citizen. There are a lot of people who've lived here all their lives who do not understand what it really means to live here. They have a distorted view of the world, that our country is so bad and everyone else is so good, and that's just not reality. Congratulations and welcome home. And like I said, we are going to have a welcome to America. I mean, of course, she's lived here for years, but becoming an American citizen. Hopefully, I think it'll be, we'll just assume it's going to be her first party as an American.
That's right.
On the 25th. That's not this, but the following Saturday. Retro Metro is going to be allowing us to have it there, hosting it, I suppose, if you will. And that'll be 4 to 6, Saturday the 25th. So we would love for you all to come out and just, show that support. And I was talking about it earlier, and it's so true and it's so sad that somebody like Katie, who put in the time and the effort, and you really do there's an appreciation. Anything you work for, you have a greater appreciation for, whether it's something that you purchase, that you earned your own money to purchase it, something that you create with your own hands, or like Katie, who wanted to become an American citizen and did the studying and put in the work and the time and everything. And she just, we got off air. She was like, oh my gosh, I started to tear up. I didn't want to cry. That appreciation. And then you see footage of people bum rushing our border to get in and immediately seek out somebody to tell them where they can get a free hotel room and then complain about the food. And it's just so unfortunate. But the person who texted in there, referencing even people live in this country, and I'm watching, as many of you that are reading news stories about these spoiled brats that protest that we saw at Stanford recently because they didn't like his opinion, and so they scream and yell at him. Or Charlie Kirk speaking at a college campus, they attack him, a police officer's injured, and their entire premise is that well, this country is horrible, it's awful. And you think you wish that you could move those people to a country where there are real problems, because they have no concept of how things could be, to where they literally manufacture problems. I mean, we see it here. Circle back to what we've talked about recently, where they're busing kids of color to MSU to create conflict, to make sure they understand how bad they have it in this country. And that lack of appreciation, and you juxtapose that to the people. I mean, Katie and her grouping, 150 people from 50 different countries, put in that time, put in that effort. We're proud to go through that process and become what is this country that they see with tremendous opportunity. And you put that next to people that seek to convince people who are born here how awful they have it. Seek to convince people that see that group over there and the color of their skin, they've got privilege over you, and you're owed something. And frankly, it's just vile and disgusting, and it shows you where the real entitlement and privilege actually is. So we're very excited for Katie. It's been a journey, in Pyramid Roofing. Again, thank you to them for sponsoring her through all of that. We've got Author of the Week coming up in the next hour. I'm Nick Reed. You want a great home loan? Well, of course you do. No one's ever like, you know what? I'm going to check out those reviews. I don't know, 4.7 out of 5. I'm looking for something more in the 2.8 range. Of course you want a great home loan. But a great home loan is much, much more than just having a great rate and a great term. It's about that personalized experience, being able to get a hold of somebody if you made some financial move or you found out that your spouse, they applied for a credit card. And you're like, what? No, why did you do that? Oh, don't you know we're not supposed to do that? Oh, no, we got to call our lender. Oh, but it's Friday at 7 o'clock at night, which means you're not going to be able to get a hold of them until Monday. And then, God forbid, that's a holiday. And then Tuesday. But if you're dealing with Don Carrick or Alex or Anthony or any of their team, call 7:30 Friday, call them. You have access to them 7 days a week until 9 o'clock at night. And if one of them happens to be working with someone else or just doing something with the family at the time, not able to answer the phone, they'll get back with you as soon as they are available. I mean, that's what you get with iwantagreathomeloan.com. Because you do. I mean, you're talking about a lot of money. You're talking about life-altering things. You're talking about huge moves here. You don't want to be. I mean, you think about the relationship that you have oftentimes with, if you've ever been through the process with a big mega lender, and how you actually have a more intimate relationship with the person at the gas station that you buy gas with every week, because you go in, you see them. Does that make sense? Makes no sense at all. You should have that sort of relationship that people who use iwantagreathomeloan.com have. We have Author of the Week coming up. It is a book about former Supreme Court Justice Scalise. I think you're going to enjoy it. Sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. So we've got that coming up here in just a couple of moments. Jason Ryman now, though, with the latest news update. First alert forecast, showers, storms today, high of 60. Rain possibly mixed with snow tonight with a low of 25. Sunny 45 tomorrow and cold on Saturday with sunshine, though, but a high of 36. Coming up, Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, Antonin Scalia, biography on the former Supreme Court Justice. Fields Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed. It is Thursday. Author of the Week Day, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. And we want to welcome our Author of the Week, James Rosen, the chief White House correspondent for Newsmax. He's a veteran Washington correspondent, best-selling historian, and his latest book, Scalia: Rise to Greatness, 1936 through 1986. I appreciate you being with us. What a great loss and unexpected it was with the passing of Scalia. You spent, obviously, quite a bit of time researching for Scalia: Rise to Greatness. And, you get these pieces, you'll get biographies, you get books, and you always hope to get something a little bit different. What is it in your years of research did you uncover that is new for people?
So, Nick, first of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you. Scalia: Rise to Greatness, 1936 to 1986, which is out this week, chronicles the first 50 years of Antonin Scalia's life. It ends with him taking his seat on the Supreme Court. And so hopefully in about 2.5 years, I'll be back on the radio with you to promote the second and final volume of this biography, which will cover the Justice's Supreme Court years. Scalia: Rise to Greatness is the third biography of Antonin Scalia. It's the first admiring biography of Antonin Scalia, and therefore, from where I sit, it's the first accurate biography of Antonin Scalia. What I found was the two previous biographies of him that had been published while he was alive, one of which he cooperated with extensively, the other not at all, both turned out the same way, which was fairly open in their contempt for Antonin Scalia, his jurisprudence, his legacy, his conduct. This book, Scalia: Rise to Greatness, really is the first comprehensive biography of Justice Scalia, where his motives aren't being attacked at every turn, but in fact where his extraordinary and profound impact on American law and society is treated as it deserves. The previous books skipped over important elements of his life and biography. They treated cursorily such important things as his devout Catholicism, his time in academia, his work for the Nixon and Ford administrations, in which he had a major impact on the country, and other elements of his biography. I gained access to a vast array of documents and personal sources that were either overlooked by or unavailable to the previous biographers. I'll give you a couple of quick examples, Nick. One is, secretly, Justice Scalia conducted an oral history looking back on his life in his Supreme Court chambers in 1992, his seventh term on the court. That was only unsealed recently, and so I'm the first biographer to make use of it. His FBI files, and perhaps of greatest interest to non-lawyers, and this is an important point about Scalia: Rise to Greatness. It is written for non-lawyers. We have the early correspondence, never before published, that flew back and forth between the chambers of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia when they served together as judges on the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, one rung below the Supreme Court, often described as the second most powerful court in America. This was the years 1982 to 1986, before Scalia was elevated to the Supreme Court, and then a few years later Ginsburg was. Their handwritten notes, letters, memoranda, draft opinions that they were shooting back and forth between their chambers as Court of Appeals judges in the 1980s not only capture the birth and the blossoming of this celebrated friendship, but I call them the RBG Nino papers. They are really brilliant expositions of the law by two legal geniuses who are also brilliant and witty people, and it makes for great reading in Scalia: Rise to Greatness.
I love that, if you will, behind-the-scenes information in a day and an age where it appears that there's nothing any longer that is secret or private, if you will, with social media, political, pop culture, whatever it may be. One of the few institutions, if you will, where it seems as if there still is a bit of a curtain or buffer privacy between the American public and the personalities and the personal lives of these justices. And that relationship is one of those that, of course, you write about, but also just the personalities of these individuals. And there's this stereotype, I think, to the average American that justices they're very stuffy and buttoned down. Justice Scalia is one that, though, has been described as being actually larger than life. What was he like in his personal life and that personality?
Nick, I'm privileged to tell you that I actually knew Justice Scalia a little bit. One of the first things I did when I came to Washington to become a Washington correspondent at the time for Fox News back in 1999, at the age of 30, was to write to Justice Scalia and seek an interview. This commenced a very amusing and unusual 2-year correspondence between us, the contents of which will be explored in Volume 2. And it also brought us together for a pair of lunches, one-on-one, at his favorite Italian restaurant, the AV Ristorante Italiano, now long gone, which was at the time in a sketchy part of New York Avenue. And we had wine, and he insisted that I eat off of his plate. I said, Mr. Justice, I could. He said, come on. So now I'm shoveling vegetables off of Justice Scalia's plate. And he drove me back to my office in his car. I've subsequently been able to confirm with a number of clerks and former classmates dating back to the 50s that was a scary experience for them as well as it was for me. He was so down to earth and lively and witty and amusing. That's one reason why he was able to forge such enduring relationships, not only with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but other liberals on the court, such as Justice Elena Kagan. But you could be forgiven in his company for imagining or for forgetting that you, for a moment, that you were in the presence of one of the greatest minds of our generation. That you might just be dining with your avuncular Italian uncle, like a Paul Sorvino type character. He was liable in people's homes to commandeer a piano with shameless and endearing grandeur and start belting out show tunes or Christmas carols for the assembled. He was very extroverted and outgoing and affable and witty. He grew up in Queens, the son of an Italian immigrant who came to America not knowing any English in 1920 and who became a renowned professor of Romance languages, and his mother, who was herself the daughter of Italian immigrants and who became a school teacher. They were devout Catholics. And one point I want to emphasize about Scalia, Rise to Greatness, this book that's just out this week, is that it treats in greater detail than any previous biography the depth and the scope of Scalia's Catholic faith and how it fueled his rise to greatness. So he was kind of a combination of outer borough, New York City, Italian-American, earthy charm, and a brilliant Jesuit-trained Ivy League intellect. And infusing those things, particularly in his written opinions, that's how he was able to affect the revolution that he ushered in American law and society, and what makes him one of the most important Americans of the last 100 years.
We are talking with our author of the week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, James Rosen, the chief White House correspondent for Newsmax. The book is Scalia, Rise to Greatness, 1936 to 1986. On that same theme, you write about one of the key events in his life involved a Catholic priest and being such a pivotal event. Tell us about that.
You're the first interviewer to ask about this episode in the book, and I think it shows your astuteness because it really is a seminal moment in Antonin Scalia's life. It's never been reported before by anybody who's ever written about Antonin Scalia, and you'll find this story in Scalia, Rise to Greatness. Scalia attended Xavier High School in Manhattan in the 1950s. It was a very rare hybrid institution because it was both a Jesuit school and it was an academic institution. It was also a military school. And Scalia loved in later years to delight audiences by reminding them how he used to commute back and forth on the subway to Manhattan from Queens with his .22 rifle slung casually over his shoulder. And then, he graduated as well, top of his class at Xavier, and then valedictorian again at Georgetown University, another Jesuit institution. So his early life was filled both by virtue of his immersion in the Catholic faith, and then again as the son of teachers and language professors, with a reverence for text. And he took this forward into his job as a judge. But one of his classmates at Xavier, one of what I know to be 3 surviving classmates of Antonin Scalia's at Xavier High School, where he graduated in 1953. One of them is the former Commerce Secretary under President Trump, Wilbur Ross, who it turns out did not know Scalia at the time. But one of them is a Catholic priest, an Opus Dei priest, now in his 80s, very sharp of mind still actively preaching and blogging on the faith, named Father Bob Connor. And he was just Bob Connor when he knew Scalia as young men in the marching band and playing basketball in Manhattan and Queens in the 1950s. And there came a moment where they were still friends, but they didn't see each other as often when they were in their early 20s. This is the summer of 1959. This is the moment in the book that you raised, Nick. And Bob Connor decides that he's not going to finish medical school after all, where he was enrolled, and he's going to enroll instead in the studying of Opus Dei in Rome with the founder of Opus Dei. And this sent Bob Connor's parents into absolute despair because they thought their son was throwing his life away. So they contacted his mother. Bob Connor's mother contacted two individuals whom she thought might be able to talk sense into her son. One was a Jesuit priest who came by the house, the Connor home on Downey Road in Queens in the summer of 1959, where Bob was up in his brother's room on the second floor of the home. He has never told this story before, Father Connor. And then the next person who shows up is Nino Scalia. And he was surprised to see him entering his brother's bedroom there on the south side of the street in Downey Avenue, Downey Road in Queens. And Scalia says to Bob Connor, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm going to go study Opus Dei." I asked Father Bob if Scalia, at that age, 22, seemed familiar with Opus Dei. And he said, "Not really," so I explained it to him. We study the sanctity that is to be found in everyday life. And Scalia nodded thoughtfully. And then, this part has never been told until this biography, Scalia Rise to Greatness. Bob Connor said back to Scalia, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And Scalia said to him, "I'm going to the Supreme Court." And future Father Bob says, "How are you going to do that?" And he told it to me as follows in our interview. James, he had a job lined up with some law firm that was in Ohio. And I said, "Yes, Jones Day in Cleveland." He's where Scalia first practiced law for 6 years out of law school, out of Harvard Law. He says, "Yes, that was at Jones Day." He said to me, "This law firm has a Washington office," which Jones Day did at the time in 1959, and of course still does. And he said, "I will be sent to Washington, and I will rise." And this is the summer of 1959 when Scalia is 22 years old, and it answers for us definitively the question, which has endured as a kind of mystery of Scalia's life throughout the literature on him, as to when he really first began to harbor the ambition within himself to join the Supreme Court. And Father Bob's recollection is decisive on the point. I asked him, "Did that seem fanciful or comical to you?" And he said, "I'm going to the Supreme Court. I will be sent to Washington, and I will rise." And Father Bob told me, "Not at all. Nino was driven." I said, "Do you think that he considered it a kind of divine calling?" He said, "I bet." And the way Father Bob described it to me was that this was a kind of a shared epiphanal moment between them, a convergence of two transcendental destinies. I'm going to Opus Dei. I'm going to the Supreme Court. It gives me chills even describing it. And I'm proud to say that Father Connor has read the book and commended it to me. And he was very important. One of the most important interviews in the entire book.
That is, it's pretty amazing, fascinating, and just in the short conversation we've been able to have with you, barely scratching the surface. Of course, the great news is that ABC Books North Glenstone, they host all of these Author of the Week books, so people can pick up Scalia Rise to Greatness, 1936 to 1986. Once again, thank you, James Rosen, Chief White House Correspondent for Newsmax here on Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, all of your home buying and all of your home selling needs. When she and Will joined us on A Great Escape several years ago, she had a chance to talk a little more in depth about her approach, her philosophy, and one of the things that she learned that she uses as a valuable tool today is honesty, and that may seem obvious, but as human beings, oftentimes we don't want to hurt people's feelings, and so if somebody's wanting to sell their home, and oftentimes there are things about a home that you may love, they're part of who you are, but it's not necessarily going to help you sell the home, or it may diminish the value, it may just be a turnoff, whatever it is. And a lot of times, realtor doesn't want to hurt your feelings, so they don't say anything. Emily Johnson doesn't like to hurt anyone's feelings, but at the same time, she understands what the number one priority is, and that is being the best realtor for you as possible as broker and owner of House Theory Realty. And so if that means giving you honest, in a gentle way, advice as to maybe some things that you do need to change about your home that you think are the greatest thing in the world, she's going to do that because her number one priority is helping you sell that home for the most amount possible, as quickly as possible. Or maybe you're looking to buy a home. She's going to devote the same sort of attention and care to that as well. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. I saw Springfield's two major health systems no longer requiring everyone to wear a mask. Why is it that the institutions that are supposed to be the most in tune with the science and things medical are behind the curve so much? Now, I get talking about having areas in which people are very susceptible to infection and are, have immune systems that are compromised, much as that has always been. I get that. But, I mean, it's just amazing to me, given what we have learned and even acknowledgments from the CDC about the ineffectiveness of masks, that just now, there's an article, the Springfield News Leader, and they note that patients and visitors will not be required to wear masks routinely in facilities, though patients with respiratory symptoms may be, asked to wear masks. But the story specifically cites vaccinated patients, staffs, and visitors will not need to wear masks in common areas such as hallways, cafeterias, or waiting rooms. So aside from what we have learned, the ineffectiveness of masks themselves when it comes to COVID, but the fact that vaccination does not stop you from spreading it. It does not. So the idea that again, way behind the curve, way behind the science, that we're still going to treat unvaccinated individuals as if they are somehow more dangerous than vaccinated individuals in terms of passing around the COVID-19. It just seems so far behind. But this is the upside down world we live in. Hey, I'm just a guy. I'm not I don't have a degree. Just a guy. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. Russian ship at U.S. drone crash site in Black Sea. U.S. officials said, quote, they wasted no time. Well, of course they didn't. I love how at any given moment we seem surprised by the behavior of our adversary. Oh, well, gosh, what they just seemed really adamant about going and gathering that up. I'm sure we'll act like it's no big deal. First alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Showers, storms 60 for a high today. Rain possibly. Mixed with snow tonight down to 25. Tomorrow sunny 45. Saturday sunny, a high of 36. You may have heard this story already. This Newark, New Jersey's Democrat-run city hall admitted last week to falling for fraud when officials held a sister city ceremony with the Hindu nation of Kailasa, a country that's not real, totally fake, doesn't exist. It was created by an Indian cult leader on the run from the law over rape charges. Maybe he just self-identified as the leader of this country. Maybe this fake country is self-identifying as a real country. When you live in the world of make-believe, how do you tell people to color within the lines? If we live in a world in which a person can, self-identify as a different sex, different gender, how can you then tell people, well, you can't self-identify, you can't change the definition of this? Okay, I see. So because you're center of the universe, you get to tell everyone else what definitions don't change. Okay, I see how that works. In a city hall ceremony, they had a full-blown ceremony in January. Newark Mayor Raz Baraka, Democrat, and other officials met with delegates of the fake country to sign an agreement of partnership. That's how far it got. A ceremony, press invited, signing an agreement of partnership. The mayor said at the time, quote, I pray that our relationship helps us to understand cultural, social, and political development and improves the lives of everybody in both places. After City Hall realized that the fake country was in fact fake, Newark Democrats were forced to admit they were duped and resorted to damage control. City of Newark, in a statement, told CBS News the fraud was a regrettable incident, but insisted no money was exchanged in the agreement. Councilman Louis Quintana, also a Democrat, said, quote, this is an oversight. Cannot happen any longer. An oversight? An oversight? Kailasa, the made-up country, even has a made-up website describing itself as the, quote, greatest Hindu nation on earth. But it is recognized by no nation and controls no territory. The concept of the fake nation was created by Indian cult leader Swami Nityananda, who claims to have supernatural powers, including the ability to see through walls. This guy could be a security guard for Congresswoman Cori Bush. I mean, right? This guy's, he's got the resume. Nityananda has been a fugitive from Indian law enforcement since 2019. The Swami has faced charges of raping a former disciple. Newark residents expressed frustration in their city government for falling for the scam. Newark resident Morris Mitchell told CBS News, I'm really sorry for the city that they got duped in this way. This is the best, I don't know if it's a rhetorical question or not, but honestly, it was one of the first thoughts I had. Shaki Merritt said, whose job is it to do a simple Google search? Not one person said, let me go and Google and figure out this was a fake. That was my thought.
Why weren't they curious as to where this place was in the first place?
I know. Now, they said that there's a fake, or there's a site that's set up, and I haven't looked over the site. I don't know if it acknowledges that, well, we don't have territory, we're a theoretical. I don't know. But here, I do at times find myself amazed at the behavior of people, particularly people that are, these are people running the city of Newark, New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey. If I am going to become, this to me is such common sense. Aside from, like Sarah was saying, you want to find out where it is, Google it to see where it is. I would look up under news the name to make sure, that they're not responsible for human atrocities, make sure that, that there isn't anything unsavory, particularly in this day and age, where people get triggered and we're so sensitive about everything under the sun and people look to politically attack you, that I'd make sure there wasn't anything atrocious about the leaders of the country or anything that goes on, they're involved in slave trade or whatever it might be. Nobody bothered to do any research whatsoever. Nothing. No one. And again, this isn't a situation where the mayor just responded to some email and immediately realized. This got to the point where they set up a ceremony where they invited the media and they had council members there, and somebody drafted a partnership resolution for them to sign at this ceremony. This went through these things take planning. Not a single, this does amaze me. Not a single person involved in even if I were the person who was an intern and I was told, hey, we need you to order cookies and snacks because we're going to have this event. And I'd be like, what's it for? Well, we're going to be a sister city. Out of curiosity, I'd be like, well, I've never even heard of that place. I think I'd look it up. Now, I recognize not everyone's curious. But to be this uninterested. And the thing about sister cities, by the way, it's not just a symbolism thing. I mean, we've got at least one in Springfield. We may have more than one. And oftentimes the taxpayers foot the bill for people within the city, elected officials or otherwise, to go visit, or will host from, those people coming over here. And there is oftentimes financial exchanges that take place. That you would enter in something that generally involves travel of your people and their people and financial money. That's why they were so quick to say, hey, no money exchanged hands yet, which whether that's true or not, who knows? I'm sure they're liars, so we don't know the answer to that. But that they would, it's just mine. I believe it because they're admitting to it. Oh, it's just really crazy to me. I can't help but believe that some of this atmosphere that would allow for such little desire to check and make sure that this thing that they're doing is a positive thing, that this sort of environment does get fostered when you have one-party rule. And Newark's a city. It's run by Democrats, always run. If you don't have to worry, because, my instinct again is, well, I'm a politician, and you got to check everything, right? We got to check. Oh, somebody's wanting to do a fundraiser with us, check their background. Somebody wants us to speak in an event, check out their background, because you don't want political opposition to use it against you. But if you have one-party rule and there is no political opposition, other than, dealing with primaries, but you have an infrastructure in place with party leaders, and they pretty much make sure that doesn't happen, then I believe that at least helps facilitate the sort of environment in which you care so little about the repercussions of what you do. You don't do the absolute bare minimum. And I mean bare minimum when it comes to something like this. Now, I've heard that they weren't the only city that got duped. This particular article only specifically mentions Newark, New Jersey, so I don't know when I've heard that some other cities also fell for this, to what extent they did, if it went so far as to have a ceremony and invite the media and have speakers and have some sort of joint resolution or whatever that everyone's going to sign and have this big celebratory event. I suspect that it didn't get that far with many people, but Newark, New Jersey, I mean, if I lived there, I would contend not a single one of those persons involved should continue to have their job. If they can't manage to pay enough attention to something like this, can you imagine what sort of oversight or lack thereof there is for everything else in Newark, New Jersey, I suspect it would be very minimal, to say the least. Sarah Myers.
Beatles Property Maintenance. Beatles is spelled Beadles. If you're looking to do some home repairs or maintenance around your home, highly recommend the fine folks over at Beatles Property Maintenance. Now, Bruce and his team, they have been providing top quality work in the Springfield community for over a decade now, and they really do just a variety of home repairs and maintenance. They have helped me out with some electrical work. They've done some plumbing. They even did the subflooring in my kitchen, and I continue to have them back out for both big jobs and small jobs as well. They did a vapor barrier. They're going to do some mold remediation as we move into that spring area. Just make sure that our house is working in top order when it comes to that. But really, they are just fantastic folks. So if you do find yourself needing home repairs or maintenance and you're not exactly sure who to call, Beatles Property Maintenance is the name that I highly recommend. Now, you can find all of the contact information for Bruce and the Beatles Property Maintenance team. That's going to be housed at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
Mm-hmm. All right. There was legislation in Missouri, I believe the last legislative session that passed, that among other things, we talked about this with Secretary of State Ashcroft, prohibited Zuck bucks, prohibited the distribution of dollars to any political subdivision that conducts elections from getting private money. This was House Bill 1878. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because one county is apparently, and this has happened in some other states, it appears as well, trying to circumvent these laws. In fact, the Federalist has a piece on this titled Missouri County Used Taxpayer Money to Join Dems Election Takeover. I'm going to share it with you now. Newly obtained records reveal that Boone County, Missouri, this is central Missouri, it's Columbia. Columbia is in Boone County. Newly obtained records reveal that Boone County, Missouri used taxpayer dollars to join a coalition of left-wing nonprofits that employ private money to influence election operations in local election offices throughout the country. Through a series of public record requests, the Honest Election Project discovered that Boone County Clerk Brianna Lennon paid a membership fee of $1,600 to the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence, an $80 million venture by left-wing nonprofit groups to, quote, systemically influence every aspect of election administration and advance Democrat-backed voting policies in local election offices. Notably, a majority of Boone County voters supported Joe Biden over Donald Trump in the 2020 election, 54.9% to 42.4%. Launched last year, the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence is comprised of left-wing nonprofits such as the Center for Tech and Civic Life. During the 2020 election, groups like CTCL received hundreds of millions of dollars from Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg. These Zuckbucks, as they're known, were poured into local election offices in battleground states around the country to change how elections are administered, such as by expanding unsecure election protocols like mail-in voting and the use of ballot drop boxes. To make matters worse, the grants were heavily skewed towards Democrat-majority counties, essentially making it a massive Democrat get-out-the-vote operation. Leading up to the 2020 contest, CTCL distributed roughly 6.8 million Zuckbucks to local election offices in Missouri. In response, state Republicans passed House Bill 1878, which stipulates that, quote, neither the state of Missouri nor any political subdivision therefore or thereof that conducts elections shall receive or expend private monies, excluding in-kind donations, for preparing, administering, or conducting an election, including registering voters. To replicate CTCL's strategy ahead of the 2024 election, the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence is attempting to skirt existing Zuckbuck bans by providing election offices with scholarships to cover Alliance membership costs. These scholarships are then, quote, instantly converted into credits that member offices can use to buy services from CTCL and other Alliance partners. So in other words, like, oh, you can't purchase our services. Well, here, just we're going to give you a scholarship, and you can use the scholarship in the form of credits to purchase what it is that has been banned to purchase in your state. In Georgia, where lawmakers adopted a law prohibiting private election funding 2 years ago, DeKalb County officials attempted to violate the spirit of the state Zuckbuck ban by attempting a $2 million grant from the Alliance. To avoid explicitly breaking the law, DeKalb officials used a loophole in the statute by having their finance department apply for the funds instead of the county's election board. The Georgia Senate has since passed a measure that, if approved by the House and signed into law, would tighten up the language in the state's Zuckbucks ban and require the county to return the money to the Alliance. While there's currently no evidence to suggest Boone County has accepted private money from the Alliance or its partners, Honest Elections Project Executive Director Jason Sneed said that the locality's lack of transparency in using taxpayer dollars to join the coalition is concerning. Quote, while all of the other offices that have joined, at least the ones that we're aware of, have been very public in joining, I have not seen anything pushed out by Boone County yet, Sneed told the Heartlander. They just spent $1,600 in taxpayer money to join a highly partisan left-wing organization, and they haven't told the public that they're doing this. In a statement provided to the Federalist, Sneed explained that since Missouri prohibits local election offices from accepting private funds, Boone County essentially bought their way into the Alliance. Quote, this is precisely why CTCL pivoted their characterization from their original model to a fee-based membership model. For jurisdictions that are permitted to receive grants, those fees are effectively waived. But jurisdictions that cannot receive private grants can still buy their way in for a relatively small sum, allowing the Alliance to spread its influence even in states where lawmakers have tried to prevent it. The Missouri Secretary of State's office did not respond to the Federalist request for comment on whether it plans to investigate Boone County for its decision to join the Alliance. And that piece is by Sean Fleetwood, staff writer for the Federalist. It goes, no, well, a couple of reasons sharing this. One, so you know that the left is still attempting to influence elections outside of ideas and honest voting. but also they are constantly looking for ways to weasel around the law. They are constantly looking at ways that they can violate the spirit of the law and the motivation behind it. And so just because a state like Missouri or Georgia, in the example also provided in this Federalist piece, there's a law passed that says, okay, we do not want left-wing money going in and paying these different entities and influencing how they conduct elections, and so you pass a law essentially saying that, they will figure out a way to get around it. They're very conniving. They have a goal of controlling the outcome of elections, and they're not going to stop simply because there's a law put into place. This is the thing we know about criminals. It's the same for gun control laws. Is that they will do whatever they can to find a way around it. And so that's why when it comes to protecting the integrity of the elections, we cannot sit back and feel, and I'm not suggesting that's what's happening here in Missouri. This seems to be relatively new public information. So hopefully the state will do something about this, whether it's create a new law or if it is a violation of current law, move forward in that capacity. But we can't ever, when dealing with people that want to control elections and veer away from honest elections, they will never, ever, ever stop. No matter how many walls you build, they'll dig under them, they'll go around them, they'll crawl over them. So we must always be vigilant. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.